it is time to move to our next speaker. Representing WVU Parkersburg, Jennifer Forster is the Executive Director of the Success Epicenter and Director of the WVU PSED program. She is joined by Shauna Carpenter, Associate Director, and Lisha Burke-Stewart, Director from Blue Ridge Technical and Community College. They are here to present Reaching the Summit, Accelerating Degree Completion with an Academic Advising Success Program.
There we go. Good morning. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Jennifer Forster, and I would like to tell you about a project we've been working on for about 4 years, 3 to 4 years, and we're extremely proud of the work that we have done. I don't know, probably 2018, the Chancellor for Higher Education had applied for a grant for an evidence-based pilot program that would demonstrate the ability to increase completion and then in the end earnings for individuals in West Virginia. So they asked 2 community colleges to implement the grant with the acceptance, I guess, or the agreement that we would be part of a study. And so Lisha and I were both selected as directors of the program. We were both community colleges. We're both pretty rural. And we have a lot of programs that go directly towards occupations that are needed in West Virginia. What they wanted to do was replicate the program that they call ASAP out of the City University of New York, but they wanted to see if it would work in a rural environment. And there's an article that I provided the reference there for, and there's a link later on, where they did a study of that program and found they were able to double the completion rates for the students in the program. And so that was pretty significant. There are some limitations for a smaller community college and the way that we replicate it, but so far we've been able to replicate about 89%, and they actually evaluate that for us too, of the things that we do that they have done. And that this is an academic success program. It's not a financial aid program, but we do provide wraparound services. Like you guys were mentioning earlier in the panel, how many additional things you've been asked to do and the complexity of the work that we provide now. But we do have some financial incentives to help reduce some barriers. This is you, Shauna.
So we started out in 2019 planning for the Ascend program. We didn't even know what it was called when we started. So we started from scratch. We didn't even have a name for it. From 2020 to 2021, we had our first pilot year. During that year, we had 60 students. We actually got to select these students. So this was before we started the actual random process of selection. In 2021, we had our first cohort that started, and there were 65 to 85 students. 2022, same thing, 65 to 85. And then this year is our last year that we're recruiting, supposedly, and we're anticipating about 120 students total in the program. And then the final year will be 2026 when our last cohort completes the program.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the program components just a little bit, because we'll get into what each one of them looks like further on down in the presentation. But some of the components of the program are academic personal support, developments, which are our advising, our innovative advising model. We have tutoring requirements for our students. We also have career development requirements that we'll get into and we'll talk about more. We're building a community of learners. So some of the activities that we provide for our students is helping them be learners. We're teaching them how, to be productive in their journey through college. We also, our students have priority scheduling. new student engagement activities that we offer for our students specifically. We also do things like Jennifer did mention, some of our other financial supports that we offer to help reduce some of the barriers, tuition waivers for the help that need gap that might be for some of our students. And we do offer textbook assistance to help kind of feel a little bit of that burden, lessen a little bit of that burden that our students have when it comes to purchasing their textbooks. And then for meeting with us, we give them monthly incentives.
So for our advising model, our students have the same advisor from the time they start the Ascend program until they graduate. This could take, they get 3 years total. So it could take them up to 3 years to obtain the 2-year associate degree, and we support them for a whole 3 years. The caseload for the advisors is supposed to be 150 students or less for the study, and the model is quite intrusive, and we monitor our contacts. So every time I meet with a student, I monitor it, I put it in our data portal. So it's a lot of data that we have to also include when we're advising. So we don't only advise, then we have to record it all. And each student is assigned a support level based on their performance. Every brand new student starts out on a high support level and they have to meet with me twice a month. So they also are, the requirements change based on their need. So if they need me more, if they have not the greatest grades, if they have a rough home life, things like that, they're going to meet with me more. And they're incentivized to complete the requirement. So when they meet with me every month, they get a $50 incentive card at the end of the month just for meeting the requirements. And this shows the description of the support levels. So the high support students, usually brand new students or strugglers, they meet with me 2 times a month, and they have tutoring requirements of twice each semester. So we try to get them to go 1 time before midterms, 1 time after midterms. Usually that's the hardest part, is getting them to do their tutoring requirements. The medium support level are usually second semester students or even second year students. This is once they have the hang of it. They only have to meet with me once a month, and they only have to go to tutoring once a semester. And then usually students that have really high GPAs, don't have any problems at all, they go into the low support level, and they only have to meet with me twice a semester, and they don't have tutoring requirements. Or they might be on low support just because they already do all the things they need to do. They go to the tutoring without being prompted. So they move to the low support and they just don't need me as much.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about some of our career activities that we provide for our students in their career development activity side of our SEND program. So each semester, our SEND students are required to complete 1 career development activity. So when we first started the program, we did things like self-exploration, on career coaching, we helped them to develop and post their resume, develop and do their cover letters and things like that, create a LinkedIn page, their profile, Indeed, career fairs, or career services programs that we have, like particularly here at Blue Ridge, we do have a career services program, and I know that also at a WVUP. And so we would link a lot of times them in the very beginning to that career services person, and they would work closely with them. And we would also offer mock interviewing. And then as the time has gone on, we've had to add other things because we have developed other things that we can add to make their career development activities better. And students change, and we have to gear it towards each student. And some students come in having resumes and things like that in their career changers. So we had to add additional things that we feel could help those particular students' needs. So we added internships. We have learn and earns where they're, they're working on the job and they're getting that experience through learn and earn grants kind of situations. And that's always good because they're learning and they're getting paid to do it. There's interviews. So we're inviting the industry people in to come in and talk with the students more and do the interviews. Job shadowing, we're offering job shadowing. Career services program, we're still doing those same things, but we're doing this a little bit more of them. But it directly reflects those students' needs and what part of their journey they're in college. Like if they're just beginning or they're getting ready to graduate, we reflect those programs and their development activities based on what stage they're entering into. And also current work reflection essays. We do those things. They help, especially if they're doing internships, and it helps with some of their requirements for their internships. So those are some of the things that they'll have to do for those internship classes as well.
So earlier I mentioned that we accepted the grant to implement the program with the agreement that we would be evaluated. And so our funders worked with Economic Mobility Corporation to create the study design, and it was chosen to be a randomized control trial. 3 months into my job, when I found out that that's what we're really gonna do, I was flabbergasted, because what we've had to do is recruit as many students as we could and send them through a pretty rigorous selection process. And then we put them to a computer program, and 60% are placed into the Ascend program, which is what we would call our treatment group, and 40% go into a control group, which I've not seen this kind of rigorous study for higher education. It's often very much correlation studies. But so it has its pluses and minuses, or advantages and disadvantages. Because we have a true comparison group that's already there. The control group are students that go through our usual college experience, and the Ascend students have those requirements and the incentives to do that, and then the intensive advising and monitoring. All of our students have to sign a consent form that we do share with them. So we followed probably one of the most rigorous protocols that we could for human studies that don't involve medical. Pretty sure this is Leisha.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about the eligibility. How do we know which students are eligible to even go through the selection process, right? So they have to be in an Ascend-approved program. They have to have 15 or fewer credit hours. They have to be full-time. They have to be enrolled full-time. And they have to have submitted their FAFSA. So those are they're simple. They seem simple enough, right? And then they go through the selection process. So then they apply, they complete the Ascend application. And once they complete the Ascend application, they complete the intake survey. So once they complete the application, we send them an intake survey that they complete before they go through the interview process. So each student, whether they're chosen for the treatment side or the control side, they all go through the same process, and we have to interview every single student. And when we're doing this process, we let them know about the, that this is a part of a random trial and that you might not get chosen to actually participate in the program. They sign the consent form that Jennifer said, so that we can share their information with mobility, the people who are doing the study, and that they're completely aware of what's going on. And then once they sign that consent form, we put them into the system to be randomized, and then we get our 60-40 from there.
So because the funders, their goal is only evidence-based social improvement programs, it is a data-heavy job that we do here when we work on the program. I kind of wanted to highlight some of the data that we have. We've got intake data that I would consider the survey and interview data and their admissions data. And so examples of this would be a first generation status. Do they have early college credits? Are they working? Do they have dependents? And then when we meet with them for the interview, it is for us to gauge how motivated we think they might be to participate in the program and to complete. And so we've had a student who would come in and apply and then say, well, I'm going to go to WVU next semester. And that they would not be able to do that within this study reasonably. They would be considered a non-success for us. Because our goal is completion in 3 years with the associate degree here. Nothing about transferring. So he would not have been a success. So we talked to him about that. And, but the participants that would be included in this are the people that are in Ascend and the control. So we have to submit all of that data. Whether they're in Ascend or not, we have to submit that. Then the next thing we submit is our semester data. So that includes full-time status, how many credits they attempt, how many they earn, if they're Pell eligible. And again, that's Ascend and control. And then this is the really fun one. We have our monthly engagement data. So this is when Shauna said earlier that she records every meeting that we have with the student, every time they participate in one of our programs. Anytime she sees them at the grocery store, all of those go into this database. And then we see if they've done their tutoring, we see if they've done their career development activity, and we find out who is and who isn't. And that gives us real-time operational use data. So we know if students aren't going to tutoring, then we need to do marketing, or we need to do something to encourage them to get in there, make it easier, whatever it might be. If we find out that they're struggling to get into a career program because it's full, or because, you know, they're in class, you know, then we can advocate to have an additional program. This just gives us things that we can use to make the program more effective in a real-time situation. And then, of course, we send our information about completion, about the Ascend group and the control group, because this is really one of the biggest things they're looking for is do we increase our completion rates? And then the last one is, and luckily we don't have to do this one. Mobility was hired to do this. They're going to go out about 3 years after they've completed college and find out what their earnings are. And so we can compare the earnings between the Ascend group and the control group. I will tell you the literature reported that I mentioned earlier, they actually found that they had a return on investment for taxpayers, because with the increased amount of completion rates, they were able to also increase earnings for that group. And so they were able to present that back to the city of New York, because they're the ones who fund their program, that, hey, you know, this is working. We've got additional tax dollars that you can use to put back into this program. So it's been able to sustain the program there. I do have a handout that we created, and there's a link on the slide. I don't think you'll be able to link to it yet, but I did provide a page later with links. So if you can get your hands on the slideshow later, it's a quick and easy way to get to it. But this is just a few of the things that we collect and what we report. I just wanted to give you a flavor of everything that we do, but there's a comprehensive list that we provide to mobility. I want to take a moment to talk about some early results. We mentioned earlier we had a pilot group. We had 60 and we got to pick them. That was awesome. They had a really high number of advising contacts that year, 17. That's a lot of times the student met with their advisor. And I will say it's not always in person. It can be on Zoom. It can be a phone call. It can be an email conversation or a text conversation. Any of those things will count for that contact. But we just want to know that the student's continuing to engage. And then we had 261 tutoring sessions of those 60. So we had some students who, once they were comfortable going to tutoring, they continued to go to tutoring, which was our hope behind this. And so this pilot has completed their 3 years. And so we have some completion rates to compare. And we actually 55% of that Ascend group graduated on time. So within 3 years. Compared to competitive college, four-year colleges, it doesn't sound very great. But right now, according to our almanac, our WVUP student body graduation rate in 3 years is 24%. So we've seen some results pretty quickly. I have some additional results because once we ran into the RCT, things changed. They really did change. And so we started with about 85, and this is just WVUP. Alicia has a whole nother group of students and a whole nother group of data. However, when we present the study, it will be combined information. But you can kind of see the 60-40% between the 85 and the 59. And then the average number of credits attempted, just a little higher. GPA and earned, the GPA was just a little bit higher. But then you can see the advising contacts. That's pretty different. And then the tutoring was amazingly different. And now this is they're on their final fall that they can be here. We have 25 left, which isn't a lot. We did have 18 complete. We're at 30% still retained. And you can compare that to the control group where they have 27% retained, and we had 18 graduate complete, and that's 20%. Compared to 21. It was interesting. This cohort came in during the pandemic. They didn't engage as quickly or as often as our next cohort. It was a challenge. We were still pretty new to the program, but you can kind of see already that we're about 51% if they all complete on time of this group in 3 years. We'll be around 51%. And the group that we got to pick was 55%. So you can already see our human bias when it came to selecting students for this group. And this keeps us honest. This keeps us, when we get to our study, it'll be something that we can stand behind because we've done everything we can to remove bias. Our next cohort, we had 94 in our ascend group and 64 in our control group and 68. So we're at 72% versus 64% retained for this fall. So this would be 1 year return for them. And we have some complete, which is just a tad higher. We're starting to see some results. They're not statistically significant. So that's the caveat with that. We have to have higher numbers for it to be statistically significant. But I think we're on our way to being able to show impact. And I think one of the final goals of this was to be able to go back to the West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission to, if we can show impact, that gives them some, I guess, some tools to kind of persuade legislature, because they would like to spread this program to all the community colleges in the state of West Virginia. So this would be supplementing with the program West Virginia Best. So most of our programs that were selected for this are eligible for West Virginia Best. So we haven't used the tuition waiver very much because of that, but we do some of that. So I would say students, for the most part, aren't getting a huge financial benefit, but what they are getting is the academic advising foundation, the ability to have an advocate, the ability to have somebody who can mentor and train and be a success coach for them. This slide does have some links to the handouts. Well, one is the slides, they're in a Google Drive, and then the data handout, and then the article that I mentioned earlier is on here as well. And then we've got some references that we looked at as we were putting our presentation together. Most of them you've probably seen already. And then here's our contact information. Feel free to email any of us. We have lots and lots and lots of documents, things that we created in support of the program. We've got policy memos for all the decisions that we make. That's something we'd be happy to share. I do know that Bridge Valley has implemented their own Ascend program with their own funders. And they're doing, I think, a different type of evaluation than we are. And Southern State, I think, is involved in this now. And also Concord has wanted to create something similar as well. So I think the word's getting out that it's been effective, and it's really a unique way to help our students, but it is high contact, high staff. But what is our return on investment if we keep a student? It's pretty high. It's a lot easier to keep them and retain them than it is to go out and find new ones. It's a lot more economical to do that as well. So I'm sorry, Sean, I think I overstepped. I think that's all we have for now. We just wanted to have some time for any questions you might have. Oh, okay. So Taylor Richardson, please.
Good morning, ladies. Thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to ask about, I saw there was a lot of prep and input for career development. I might have missed it. Is there additional support or specific support for students who are looking to transfer vertically up to a 4-year program or institution?
Well, yes, well, our advisor would be helping them with anything about the transfer part of it. I will tell you, West Virginia University, and I can only speak for ours, West Virginia University offers bachelor degrees. That first pilot group, 22% of our students have gone on to complete bachelor degrees here. So again, I don't have any real statistical evidence that, because the pilot group is pretty awesome. They're just, I mean, we got to pick them, right? You pick your best students when you want to do this, but we do talk to them about that. But I would think we have a lot who want to go on to WVU. We have a lot who want to go into Marshall because they're close. Glenville, those are, you know, our West Virginia students, they don't like to leave family.
Right.
So a lot of them would stay here, but maybe Alicia, you could speak to them about what you do.
I can, we host a transfer fair here. So we do, if our students express that they want to continue on, we will, if the school they're interested in transferring to is not represented, our Ascend advisor will reach out to that school and walk them through the process so they know everything that they need to know beforehand. So we do work a lot to help make sure that their everything is taken care of.
And just to that, I mean, you guys are taking a lot of data. Are you all tracking or asking on the front end how many of your students are interested to pursue or looking to pursue a baccalaureate degree and so on? Because there is pretty disparaging numbers and percentage of students who start at a 2-year with the interest and actually obtain that 4-year degree in a 4 to 6 year time frame. So I'd be really excited to see how successful you all are in that.
Right, that would be a really neat metric to measure as far as transferring and going on to get the bachelor degrees. The programs that were chosen though were ones that were needed locally, at least for us. And so our assumption is we want them to go earn dollars, right, to show impact. Now, if they want to get their bachelor degrees at the same time, great. And we would never discourage anybody from, we're all proponents of education. That's who we are. But the study wants to find out about the increased earnings for the Ascend group. So, but I would say that we were looking at adding elementary education because we now can offer an associate degree for elementary ed, and we would like most of our elementary students to actually finish that bachelor degree before they're dealing with students. So that was one we couldn't include because they felt like they wouldn't go out and get earnings. So that was, it is a deliberate decision by the researchers not to do that yet. What's going to happen next year? This was our last cohort for the study. It's our last cohort for our funding. I'm not sure. We're going to be looking for additional grants, additional state support, and ways that we can sustain it. So for what you could pull from this, I would say looking at the advising model is one way that we can sustain. We have staff and personnel, and one of the things I'd like to do here is to take our model and expand it to all of our professional advising center employees. So they would continue to track the contacts. They would continue to do the monitoring, the attendance at the beginning of the semester, the midterm grades, the early alerts that we get, all of those. We do those anyways, but it would be how do we incentivize them to come in and see us 2 times a month? That's the hard part. And so that's going to be our challenge. Our career services office is going to exist no matter what, and our tutoring center is going to exist no matter what. But how do we incentivize this, which is really kind of, I think, the crux of participation. But I do know it's the advising contacts that matter in the success. And that's what the satisfaction surveys indicate. Were there any other questions?
So we do have a question in the chat from Robin Stafford about what are the incentives? So if you could speak a little more to that.
So Leisha mentioned earlier that everybody has to complete the FAFSA. And so for all of that is everything that they get for incentives, except for the incentive cards, are based on their Pell eligibility, what they receive, what they don't receive. So this is all mitigated by that. So if we have a student who's Pell eligible and they have enough to pay for all of their tuition, mandatory fees, and their textbooks, they would not receive our tuition waiver or a textbook assistance. If they don't have enough Pell or West Virginia Invest to cover tuition and mandatory fees, we would apply a tuition waiver. So for what we've applied the tuition waiver for most has actually been our pre-nursing students. Those of you at community college probably know that pre-nursing is not supported by West Virginia Invest. Once they get into the nursing program, it is, but pre-nursing is not. So that's where we've done a lot of our tuition waivers. We originally required every student to apply for West Virginia Invest as well. And Leisha had an issue because they were afraid to commit to that because she's in a tri-state area where they would want to go perhaps to Maryland to get a job. So that became not a requirement. So we've seen a little bit of a increase in tuition waivers. The textbook, again, if they have enough Pell to take care of it, they don't get the $200, but everybody else who doesn't have Pell or anything like that get the $200 because West Virginia Invest does not cover the textbooks. The last thing is a $50 Kroger card for us. I'm not sure, Alicia, what you're using, but that they can use for fuel, because everywhere around here is a Kroger. They can use it for fuel, or they can use it for food, or we've had students sell it to their parents. We've had people buy diapers, whatever it might be. It is at their discretion to do that. That is going to be the hard part to replicate because, as you know, we are not getting the same amount of help from the state and from the federal government that help pay for college support. So that is going to be our challenge, and that's we reached out. We actually had another grant from our funders are Arnold Ventures, and then we had another smaller grant from Benedum to help pay for some of this because we went from a 2-year study to a 3-year study midstream. So that was interesting.
But they get $500 worth of Kroger cards. They get one each month. It's not just one. The same with the book incentives. It's every semester. So that adds up if you have no money.
You'll right at the end of the month will be like, when are you gonna let those go? When are you gonna let us pick up our cards? So they're great. The one thing about this is you really get to know the students in a different level, and you leave crying some days, you leave so proud some days, but you really leave knowing that you made a difference. And the nice thing is we've got data now to back that up. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. Jennifer Clutter from West Virginia University School of Pharmacy. First of all, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm really excited about the numbers that you're seeing and the success that you're seeing, and wish you well in continuing the study and finishing out and getting those students to, to be productive citizens and really meet the goals of the program. One of the criticisms that I always have of higher education research is that it tends to focus a lot on just quantitative information. And so my question is, are you collecting any kind of qualitative information on how students are doing that is germane to informing perhaps policy-making decisions moving forward in the way that we advise, the way that we, get them connected to other resources and the other supportive systems that are clearly showing benefit with the quantitative data that you've shared?
Sure. So our mobility, our researchers, they conduct focus groups with the students and with other individuals on our campus. So you know, you can't do this in isolation. One of the things you have to know is that this program couldn't be done by 3 people. You have to have a team approach, with your general advisors, your financial aid, your business office. We had advisory teams that would give us real-time information and advice and help. So that was more operational, but when you look in hindsight for the student experience, they do focus groups, and they're supposed to come in and do a site visit. This all started on the pandemic, which made it a little bit harder for them to come visit us. And then they wanted to find out from our campus team, how widely known was the program now, like on the campus, how supported was it? Was it something that everybody knew about? Were we getting leadership support? Those kinds of questions come out of that. What's it really like behind the data? Like, you know, they meet with us monthly, but they want to know, you know, maybe not people who are leading it. They want to know outside of us what's really going on. But I believe they're planning a site visit here this fall.
Thank you. That's great. I would be really curious to see the outcomes from some of those focus groups. Because I think I find that in having those discussions with students, that there's a lot of stuff that a Likert scale just doesn't pick up, you know, in quite an adequate way. So I'm just, thanks so much for presenting today. This was wonderful to hear about.
Spread our work and our effort. It has been a lot of hard work for both campuses and for the other individuals with me. But this is career changing for me. Like it exposed me to this whole world of research. And so that was very exciting for me on a professional level.
My raise hand feature is not working based on my co-host and host privileges here today, but I wanted to follow up on something that you'd mentioned in your presentation. Joy Carr, WVU, by the way. I think you mentioned that industry, like local industry, was involved in maybe coming in and or having students go to them, or how can you speak more to how the local businesses in your area might be involved, or what's involved with that?
Well, when they chose programs, we looked for areas of critical need. So that was one of the things we considered. You know, most community colleges have their pulse on the industry in the area because that's why we exist. So they were involved in that. I know Leisha brings employers in to meet with their students. And then we have what we call our summer institute for our students. We had employers come in and meet with our students before classes start, our new students. I think once we move away from the whole recruitment piece, we're about done with this, the recruitment part for the study. I think we're going to move more into what else can we do to help students become employable. So that's our next steps. Leisha, I know you have a lot more to say about this.
So a lot of things that we do at Blue Ridge is we partner with our industry. So we actually they let us do presentations on site and things like that, where we try to get some of their employees who don't have a degree so that they can become students as well. And so that's really helpful, because a lot of our students, that's one of the reasons why we had to change some of our career objectives as well, is because we're getting a lot of those students from the employers themselves. They're sending them to us to continue to do, so they can, you know, step up at their job, so they can get a raise or get a promotion. And so we do a lot of that partnership with our business and industry.
And as an advisor, I look for opportunities for them. So if I see that there's a really good fit for an externship or an internship over the summer, I make sure my students know about it, because the only way they're going to know about these opportunities is if someone presents them to them.
She also was really good at encouraging them to take summer classes. So she'll plan out their 2 to 3 years and how we can get them through, and you know, like the you know, name says, accelerating. We do support them for summer. We give them textbook assistance and incentive cards if they choose to go summer, just to support that whole acceleration mission. Please don't hesitate to reach out and contact any one of us. Like I said, we have a lot of resources. We also still interact with our mentors from ASAP CUNY. So they work with all the replication teams on an ongoing basis. And I can say West Virginia has 2 that are official. We've had some new ones that have tried to replicate even what we're doing, but North Carolina has replications, Ohio has replications of it now. So it's becoming a well-known program, and our ability to network across the nation now is growing. And so that's a really neat opportunity for us. If you are interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. We can send you our contacts if you want to find out more. Okay, well, thank you for your attention and good luck with the rest of the fall.